morning, everyone. Happy Saturday. I am a ghost. I'm invisible. Hold on, let me fix this. Let me just. Boop. There we go. Apparate. And actually, it seems like I've got some audio funkiness going on here. So let me just take a quick little look. Quick little look-see. That's not right. And how's that? Hopefully I no longer sound like I'm hidden in a tin can. What stream is complete without some tech gremlins? First thing in the A to the M. How are you today? How's your week going? Hopefully you're set up for a wonderful weekend ahead, filled with games, adventure, and the like. This, of course, is the Speaking Common news podcast, weekly news. I'm changing the format again. As you know, we're constantly kind of growing, changing, revamping, reinventing. I messed up all of my Discord notifications this morning, so apparently I'm shaking out the cobwebs. Shaking them out. Let me give the people a link to click on. God. Amateurs, I'm telling you. But, you know, it's a work in progress, a continued work in progress. And I'm pumped to be here with you for another Saturday. It's been a pretty awesome week. Can't complain. Work continues to be a bit of an asshole, but I have gaming to look forward to. This week was busy on the content side. I had actually I was kind of testing the amount of things that I am doing to try and create new, fresh content every single day, and I think the reality is that I've hit a bit of a wall with it. It's taking a lot of time, and I sat down yesterday and I actually went through all the hours I put into content, video editing, image editing, setup for stream, including game prep for the games that I run throughout the week. And it amounted to about 30 hours a week, which is almost a second job. So I'm going to have to see what I can do to kind of trim that down. And to begin, I'm looking at some of the content that I have that's a little bit more popular that people seem to really resonate with, and I'm going to kind of preserve that and work my way down from there, and I might start to lighten up on some of the other things. So we'll talk a little bit later in the show about what that means for the future of Shambazzle Games and the content that I'm going to produce. I think what that ultimately means is a return to a focus on dungeon mastery and the game specifically. In addition, I am looking at kind of reaching out beyond Dungeons and Dragons and encountering some other systems as well to expand my horizons, if you will. 8x10 RPG, welcome. Saw the suggestion to watch on Arkham Forge Discord. Thank you very much for joining me. I'm thrilled to have you here. Of course, I've been on the Arkham Forge Discord for a long time. Love the gang over there. We're going to talk a little bit about Arkham Forge later in the show when we focus on map making, which we're doing in the second half. I'm really excited about that. Of course, my digital map making suite consists of two primary components. 8x10, you'll be familiar with this, Flowscape, and of course the Arkham Forge Masters Toolkit, both incredible tools and platforms for designing and developing your tabletop experience. Dr. Feargood, the doctor, is in. Welcome, Dr. Feargood. The only doctor who matters on Twitch, if you saw that news. One of the few remaining doctors in the Twitch landscape. I don't know if you guys caught that, but Doc Disrespect has been perma-banned from the Twitch platform. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of that stuff going on as well. Welcome. Glad to have you. If you are in chat and you're lurking, that's fine, of course. But don't hesitate to say hello, say good morning, participate in chat. Of course, the big platform that I have here is really about interactivity, interaction, asking questions, exploring things together. So designed to be highly back and then forth. That's kind of what my focus is here. But the new format that I'm looking at for Speaking Common going forward, it won't be much of a change from what you're used to. We'll talk a little bit about D&D weekly news, but it'll be a lot less packaged. So we'll talk about what that looks like in a little bit too. Dr. Feargood, wow, caught doing malpractice? Yeah, to put it lightly. Several times the doc has skirted the lines of what may or may not be acceptable in the TOU. The Twitch terms, service, and use. I was actually at E3 2 years ago when he did his whole bathroom vlog. I don't know if you guys remember that, but he was like filming people in the bathroom, and I think he got like a 2-day temporary suspension for that. Of course, you have other streamers throwing their cats around. You know, maybe it's a sign that Twitch is actually starting to bring some equity into the streamosphere. I won't go too far down that rabbit hole because it gets a little venty, but as a small streamer on Twitch, it's difficult because we're very aggressively held to the terms of use on Twitch, and constantly we see like bigger players just getting away with absolute murder. So it's kind of nice to see, we all should have to play by the same rules, right? And it protects the community. I mean, my community is based on a love for D&D, for gaming, friendly positivity, keeping things safe and engaging and interesting, and that's what I want to protect here, right? So we want to keep it related. Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, exactly. And that's the tip of the iceberg, Fear. There's a lot of crazy shit that goes on Twitch. So, and much of it is slightly offside, if you know what I'm saying. So there you have it. Yeah, but otherwise, having a grand old time. And we're here to talk about tabletop role-playing games, the sport of the Dungeons and the Dragons. Again, thank you for joining me. If you are new to the show, please do throw me a follow, punch that purple button, say hello, don't be shy. That is the currency in which I deal. So if you hang out, then I will greatly appreciate it. And of course, ask any questions that you have as we go through chat. Throw anything at all at me if you want to talk about D&D, gaming in general, what happened in your week. I want to know it all. Yeah. We had a pretty exciting week here. Of course, if you follow the channel, you follow my content, you'll know that Steph and I not only play video games together, but we actually play music together as well. So we've been working on a set. Our focus is mainly like we do a couple of acoustic covers that we enjoy, but it's mainly kind of like Celt, upbeat, sort of happy music, and we're having a really great time with it. Well, Steph, who is quite an accomplished musician, started teaching herself guitar at the beginning of the summer. Let's say maybe a little bit before. Let's say beginning of April, late March. And she has done really well with it. So we always said, like, when she was kind of ready to graduate out of her hand-me-down guitar that she's playing right now, that we'd get her own guitar. So yesterday, we got to go guitar shopping because there's a huge guitar warehouse near us that has just kind of reopened. And, of course, they're maintaining proper social distancing practices, lots of sanitization, very restricted numbers of people allowed in the store at the time. And it wasn't very high traffic anyway. How I Nerd, welcome the folks from How I Nerd, the team in the house, and Gamer Mom Luna. It's an all-star cast this morning. Let's do some shout outs here. Of course, if you don't follow How I Nerd yet, you need to fix that. There's a quick shout. Find them there, throw and follow. Great gang of folks, amazing community, one I'm very proud and happy to be a part of. And of course, part of the stream team, the Storytellers Union that you'll see in my link below too. It is morning. Indeed, How I Nerd. It is. And Luna, of course, always pleasure to have you by. Welcome, gang. If you are watching, you're new to the stream, throw me a follow if you haven't done so yet. And if you are so inclined, here is a very simple one-click tweet that you can pound to help me get the word out about the streams and bring some more friends in. To continue the conversation, the exploration of adventure, narrative, and the things that we love to call tabletop role-playing games. So yeah, you went strawberry picking, Gamer Mom Luna? Awesome. We used to go blueberry picking when I was a kid. One of the few things that grew in Newfoundland. Other than barley and wild blueberries. Strawberry picking, amazing. Did you get a good haul? How many strawberries? What's the wealth of your strawberry hoard today, shall we say? Yeah, so we got to go guitar shopping. It was a really exciting experience for her. Of course, I've purchased a number of guitars myself, but I always remember that first time in a music store, sourcing out a guitar that I wanted and playing through everything in the shop that I could, talking to the sales folks there who, like I said, were very respectful of the current operating procedures that we're under today. So they, yeah, they're really wonderful. And she wound up getting a Takamine, just a beautiful electric acoustic. So we play a lot. We've got a set now of about 10 songs, and we are in negotiations to actually stream some of that. So keep an eye out because we might be bringing that into 2Play soon. Howie Nerd, I wish I was musically inclined, but I never have been. Just a great lover of music, lover of the art. What kind of music are you into? Dear Mom Luna, I got about 4 pounds of fresh strawberries. Oh my God, I could live on strawberries. Recently, my favorite application of strawberries is freezing them and then throwing them into vodka sodas. Strawberry margarita. We cracked the top on margaritas yesterday, too. We had blended margaritas out in the backyard. It's a good week all around. Good week. Can't complain. But we have a lot of great gaming to look forward to. I've got my Sunday game has been rescheduled because we're at a point in the story where it's kind of pivotal, and I have one player who's not able to make it. My typical home rule, I guess, or house rule around that is if we have a player who's missing, we give them the option to either ghost, which means you kind of follow along quietly, or you can assign your character to another player at the table to play for you. And there are benefits and disadvantages on either side. If you ghost, then you're kind of free from harm. You won't be involved or implicated in any of the combat. There's no chance that you could, be damaged or die. But the backside of that is you won't receive session experience if you're not participating, right? And then you're up to whatever loot is disseminated at the end of the session and whatever pickings are left over for you. The other rule that I have, the other side of that, if you choose to be played by a character, if you can't make a session, is obviously you put the trust and faith of your character in the hands of that fellow player, and then they can play you. You participate in combat and all the spoils that result therein. But there's also the opportunity that you could fall to your own peril or die, in other words. And it would be super shitty for a character to die when the player is not there, but it's sort of a calculated risk, right? Risk versus reward. You have to kind of make those decisions and determine what's more important to you, gaining the session experience, gaining the loot, or running the risk of losing your character in that session. So, Howie Nerd, that's a loaded question, mostly underground, whether that's educated backpacker, hip-hop, or hardcore punk, electronica as well. Used to throw parties for a living in the 90s. That's a good way to spend the 90s, I think. Awesome. I've always been more like acoustic singer-songwriter, alt rock. When I grew up in the 90s, I fronted a rock band. It was the time of my life, and it was this is the time of my life. But before this, that was the time of my life. I had a lot of fun doing it. I was a lead singer and played a little guitar. So it's really fun. Yeah, Steph and I are putting a set together. We have a lot of Celt music, a lot of acoustic singer-songwriter style music too. So we'll be looking to bring that into stream soon. I'm really excited about it because we enjoy streaming together. So Gamermon Luna, I'll be back downloading something on the Xbox, and it's drawing all my internets right now. Well, go ahead and dedicate that hard-earned bandwidth to securing new Xbox games. I endorse that heavily. Welcome, of course, to Saturday morning, the Speaking Common D&D Weekly News, DM chat, map making, game prep, campaign planning, and more. This is my flagship show every Saturday, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 8 p.m. Pacific Time, I believe, if the math checks out. Howie Nerd, we have a good friend in the music stream space. If you want any advice, absolutely. Yeah, please line me up. I love that category too. The music and performing arts category has always felt like a second home to me. Of course, D&D category being where I put down my roots. But we'd love to do some things like that live, and we're doing some content through her TikTok channels and all that stuff. So on that note, actually, I did say that I was going to talk a little bit about the next evolution of content that I'm producing. Put a lot of time into content every week. It has become a little bit voluminous, and the good news is that my own business is picking up a little bit. Of course, as some of you know, that my proper background, I guess, or my daytime background is in digital marketing. So some good opportunities to come up there, but it is it worked out to about 30 to 35 hours a week that I was putting into content. So in the interest of trimming, blah, blah. In the interest of trimming that back, I've decided I'm going to keep with the streams. We'll keep with the segments that we do here on stream, which we're going to jump into a little bit. But I'm going to use the bulk of Speaking Common every Saturday morning to really talk about game prep and get back into the game and the roots of the game. And that's going to allow me to really focus on the one thing that I truly, truly enjoy above all else in the TTRPG environment, and that is running and creating games. So I'm hoping to make some more games available. I'm hoping to kind of brush up on my use of these virtual tabletop platforms. I'm looking to expand my reach into other systems as well and just kind of grow that way. So that means a lot less post-production, editing, correction, audio editing. The other thing that's fallen by the wayside is Charisma Check, which is my long-running actual play podcast. It's very near and dear to my heart, and I want to get back to that. We are up to episode 5 published, and I have like 30-odd episodes to edit. So I want to return my attention to that because I and the crew have put a lot of time into it. And otherwise I want to be more involved in the community, like I've been saying, especially here on Twitch. So I've turned my attention exclusively and explicitly to Twitch. We're going to focus on streaming here because I really do enjoy that interactivity. So when I was trying to figure out what I kept and what I needed to trim down, I started with the things that I just felt I absolutely couldn't live without, right? Community, stream, game prep, making games available. These are the kind of core tenets that I want to build the rest of my content offering around. So yeah, that is the idea. And with that, let us jump into the Speaking Common weekly D&D news for this Saturday. Checking the date. It is June 27th. And it looks like this. Well, there are many things happening in the world of Dungeons & Dragons, particularly on the business side for Wizards of the Coast this week. I'm sure you saw a lot of it. Perhaps one of the most hot-button topics or one of the most highly debated topics right now is, of course, the recent announcement and statement that Wizards of the Coast had delivered regarding the future of race and alignment in the game. Now, this is not a new discussion for or around the game of Dungeons & Dragons, and tabletop gaming in particular. So we know that it is something that has required attention. And in the interest of inclusion and diversity, Wizards, of course, has now formalized that statement. Always polarizing. I don't think it will be any strange territory for anyone who follows TTRPGs in general, that there always seems to be this dichotomy between those who believe that the game that we love and the experiences that we share should better reflect the important issues or the topics that require our attention and cultural change in the world we live in. And then, of course, there's the other camp that believes, this is absolutely fantasy and this is really kind of an overcorrection and yada, yada, yada. Before I go into this rabbit hole, I will happily and openly say that my position on this is fairly straightforward. I also believe that the games that we play and the topics we discuss, particularly in an organic, constantly evolving environment like tabletop role-playing games, should better reflect the inclusivity and diversity that we want to see not only in those experiences, but at our tables as well. So in my opinion, if this is a conscious change that Wizards is making to better represent the cultures and the audiences who enjoy those products, then I think it's their prerogative to do so, and I endorse that. It's always so much of the power in how these games play out and the experiences that we develop are in the hands of the table. I'm confused as to why people would really take an aggressive stance on this to the contrary, because realistically, all Wizards is saying is that, look, we recognize that there is a desperate need for cultural shift here. It's something that's probably been allowed to go on for far too long, and they're taking the right steps to address it. They've also been under a lot of pressure from the community to make these steps. So, I mean, what would you expect any respectful, a self-aware organization to do other than take that feedback from the community and reflect it in their games? Let's not forget that in 4E, Wizards of the Coast was horribly vilified for not listening to the feedback for the community, right? So now they're taking very distinct steps, and they have been doing so with D&D 5e. They've been taking feedback directly from the community and putting it straight into their products, almost to a point where they they've become predictable because we can get a sense of what's happening in their production offering based on what feedback the community has given. They've been that kind of dialed in, right? So you don't get to punish an organization for doing what you ask them to do and punish them for not listening to you. You know what I mean? I think what we see here, when you whittle it all down and just focus on the facts and take the emotion out of it, is an org that is diligently trying to answer the need of the community and be responsive to those needs, and at the same time be responsible in reflecting the culture that really exists around the game today. So if that is a deal breaker for you, then you have to decide whether or not that product is still the right product for you, right? I won't make comments about what that might infer based on your personal values, because that's not what I'm here to do. And that's where I draw the line around, gaming and politics. But it is always in the hands of each and every table to define their own experience around these games. If you have a particular perspective on this, or let's say a particular culture is inherently evil in your world, then that's really up for you to define as a referee and a mediator of the rules. Just be conscious that if you make those kinds of choices, that you have to be aware of how people at your table feel about that too, right? So, and that just comes down to being a good human. So at the end of the day, be a good human. Is this something that really bothers you as much as it might benefit another audience, right? Like, for me, I'm not going to lose any sleep over the fact that Wizards is making this change, because I respect their ability to make that change, and I know why they're doing it. And I know that I personally happen to be for it, but let's say hypothetically, if I wasn't for it, then I don't really need to enforce that opinion, because I know that it benefits more people than me, right? And I don't think it makes sense for people to really take a hard stance on this. I think it inflames and it aggravates and exasperates issues that are already, constantly very delicate. So know when it's time for you to step into a conversation, and know when you would probably do well to close your mouth and listen. And I think that's really what it comes down to. And that's my stance on the whole statement. But let's get back to the specifics of what the statement means. So they're looking to depict the beauty and humanity as reflected in the game, as they've said in this statement. They reinforce the idea that human really means everyone in this sphere. The players, the races, the people who are depicted in the game, and how they're presented. And they acknowledge that the D&D community is far more diverse than it's ever been, and it needs to be reflected in the game and updated to match that reflection. I think these are all perfectly reasonable approaches. Some of the diversity improvements that they're proposing for Dungeons and Dragons in the near future include addressing, of course, the orc and drow issues that have surfaced recently and over time, which I think are perfectly reasonable. There's nothing that Jeremy Crawford said himself, there's nothing that inherently means that orcs or any other race have to be evil. My favorite game was a half orc who I totally glossed over the whole Gromesh thing, which is the evil side of orcs that kind of always compels them into Gromesh's will. I actually glossed over that. I never ever once brought it into any of my character or any of my NPCs. And I loved this character who had this kind of conflict of not really identifying with either side of his human or orcish skin. But he was good. I mean, he was a good guy. He was born and raised a good guy. He was actually oppressed by other races that I guess you might call inherently good in D&D, which is also part of that challenge. So, Drizzt Do'Urden and Drow are not inherently evil cultures. They are cultures who live on their own, but some of them might do things that are considered evil, and that is part of that story, right? Just like no bad guy is inherently evil. We'll talk about this later in the show as well, when I talk about the motivations of your big bads, and how even evil guys or bad folk still often are far more interesting when they act in the interests of doing what they believe is right. Right. So, and that really comes down to the narrative and how the story manifests. It really isn't and shouldn't be tied to upbringing or culture at all, because there's no way that you can be born evil. Right. I truly believe that. So that should be reflected. Some of the other changes that they're looking to bring, of course, they'll continue to present these, particularly orc drow races, elvish races, as complex and culturally rich in various worlds that have been recently released, like Eberron and the Wildmount compendiums. There's a focus on some source book reprints that are coming through where they're identifying some of this racially insensitive language and trying to correct that as well. They've actually enlisted the assistance of sensitivity readers and cultural consultants as well. So, I mean, like, you got to give them some credit, right? We don't get to sit back and land base an organization and say, you're doing it wrong, do it better. And then they come out and say, look, here's all the things that we're doing to do it better. There will always be pundits on either side that tend to come from a particular group in the tabletop role-playing community. And you can always tell who they are because they immediately come out and make it quite obvious. But they're trying to do it right, and I think they're taking more steps over and above than a lot of organizations who probably aren't under this type of scrutiny, and good for them in that regard, I think. The current content changes to Curse of Strahd, Tomb of Annihilation, around the Vistani. Like I said, they're tackling that racially insensitive verbiage, so they're working through this, and we'll look forward to more rewrites and reissues of these as they come down the pipe. And they also alluded to a new coming product that's not yet announced that will allow players to customize their origin, including ability scores rather than benefits tied to race. And I really like this. I mean, why shouldn't you have a dexterous half-orc, right? Maybe I want to play a monk who's a half-orc, but the half-orc race is not, as like optimized for that class, mechanically. So that tends to be a gate for people who might want to play a particular, explore a particular race and culture in the game, because they also don't want to like nerf out their fighter or barbarian or bard in that regard. And I think that will open, like, I'm tired of seeing, wood elf monks. I'm tired of seeing half orc barbarians. It's just, it always seems to be funneled in because mechanically they just make sense. How cool would it be to start seeing like orcish bards or, maybe like, I don't know, Warforged who does slam poetry, things like that. I think it just, the way I look at this, and I think the right way to look at it, is an opportunity to really blow the safety off of combinations and interesting creatives around characters. And I think that is a much better way to look at these types of changes rather than fight hard to keep things in the same little pocket that you have become comfortable with over the last few editions. So, moving right along, we have Midnight Zion. Thank you very much for the follow. Welcome to the stream. Hope you enjoy your time here. This is Speaking Common, of course. We go through D&D weekly news, and then later in the show we'll get into segments where we explore the player's handbook, the rules of the game, and then we're going to map making, game planning, so I hope you stick around for that. Welcome to the Checkmates. You're part of an amazing crew of tabletop gaming aficionados, enthusiasts, video gamers, and all things in between, so thank you for dropping by and joining us. On that note, really quick, I want to give some shouts to some offline followers. We had Gramp WND. We had Mountaineer Jedi with the online follow. Polished Cryptid joining us. Of course, we had some back and forth on Twitter. Glad to see you here, and I followed back accordingly, of course. Flight Path Acquired, and now Midnight Zion, our most recent, the freshest talent in the Checkmate pool. Thank you and welcome. Yo, yo, yo. Yeah, if you are listening, if you're watching in chat, don't be shy. Speak up. Say hello. If you have any questions or thoughts around any of this, I love that back and forth. So don't hesitate to say hello, to holla at me. And share what you like to share. In other news, this is not necessarily D&D news, but it's important news for streamers and content creators, of course. Mixer, the Xbox subset, has announced that they are folding after barely a year from launch. So they launched about a year ago, and now they're actually folding the service. Clearly, it didn't perform the way that they had expected, even though they had generated some pretty respectable growth over the last year. But in that process, they've actually struck a bargain or a deal with Facebook to migrate all of their content creators or streamers partners, and hopefully, as a result of that, some of their viewing audiences over to the Facebook gaming platform. Now, I've never really heard of Facebook gaming until this happened. I made the conscious decision to actually divest from Facebook when COVID-19 started. It was just far too much negativity for me. And when and if I do go back to Facebook, there will be some serious culling of my my social circle there required. But This is not anything new. Of course, the streaming wars have been going on for a long time. Everybody trying to take a run at the king of the hill, which is Twitch, the Amazon contender, of course, right now. But Mixer had launched with sort of lukewarm reception in the beginning. It was really intended to integrate well with Xbox and sort of be a platform that was geared towards Microsoft and Xbox gamers, but open to the public at large. Of course, it was the only really option they had if they really wanted to play in that level, no pun intended. But I thought Facebook was interesting because as a digital marketer, I do a lot of work in the demographics that these platforms serve. And I know the Facebook platform just serves primarily the highest volume users on Facebook are in the 55 to 65 year range. So you got mainly 55, 65-year-olds. I don't really know if that is going to be a prime target audience for video game streaming. But there are also some stats that I came up with that I thought were surprising. I wasn't really expecting. So they've grown to 120 or 102 million viewers in 2019 on Facebook. Mixers was sitting at around 119 million before the close of the year. Twitch, on average, had 2.7 billion views or hours viewed for 2019. So some pretty significant deviation in viewership there. Obviously, Twitch has tremendous amount of loyalty, and I think that was kind of underestimated. The way I called it out is like they what struck me was the way that Mixer delivered this. It was very much like a high fives all around. What a great thing we're doing for streamers. And like, in addition, we've also struck a deal with Facebook to adopt those streamers or whatever. The demographics don't really add up, though. It's unfortunate because a lot of big streamers left their long-standing gigs with Twitch to join Mixer. Of course, they were paid handsomely, so I have a hard time having too much sympathy for folks like Ninja, Shroud, who I think were paid a purported $30 million or something like that, or it was something silly. What did I get to here? Had these written down. Yeah, so Tyler Blevins, who you might know as Ninja, was purportedly paid between $20 and $30 million US to join the platform when he made that switch from Twitch. And I drew that stat from GeekWire from a report that they submitted a little while ago. So a lot of money involved. I mean, they're going to be okay, but a lot of streamers really had a hard time. And on the day when they announced this, if you looked at kind of the browse listings on Mixer, there were a lot of streamers that were really bent up about it. This is a challenge when you stream for a living, right? You always have to be smart about how you're managing your income. I think a lot of young folks get into this because it's why wouldn't you want to? Like, it's highly attractive. You're going to play video games for a living, sure, but you also need to grow up quickly in the sense of how you are managing that money, thinking about your future. You're not going to be able to do this forever. And what happens when your platform folds? I've been saying this from day one. I use Twitch as the example, which has a lot of staying power and stability. But I was like, what if a platform folds and this is no longer an option for you? What do you fall back on? Right? You got 30 years of video game streaming. That's really hard to transfer to anything else unless you're going into influencer, right? You carry those audiences. There's some benefit to it there. But for those who are kind of middle of the pack or just emerging and just starting to think about how to make this a full-time gig, it can be an extremely big hit. And they can often be stuck not really knowing where they're going to go from there. We talk D&D with the big follow. Was it? Was that? Where was that? Wait for that to come through. What was it? That was an odd. That was a weird stream alert that came through there. I have to double check that. We talk D&D. Welcome. Thank you very much. Oh, it may have been a host. I'm sorry. My streams. They subscribed. Thank you, Fear. Oh my God. Thank you for the subscribe. Thank you for the subscription. Very much appreciated. Sorry, I don't know how to read my own stream alerts. We talk D&D with the big sub. Thank you so much for your support. Of course, great fellow community members. Say hello in chat if you like. We'll give you a shout out too. Thanks for joining us today. Very much appreciate the sub. That's really nice of you. Aw. Welcome to the Checkmates. You're part of an amazing community of tabletop role-playing game aficionados, video gamers, and much, much more. Of course, you know that because you're no stranger to the community yourself. Let me see if I can do this properly. Why is that not coming up in my active feed then? Or my activity feed? Splendid. Continuing on with the news, we have a couple of things specifically that they're doing for viewers and partners. Of course, viewers for the most part. If you have money tied up in that system, they're crediting that back to you in Xbox game cards, gift cards rather. So hopefully that's of some use to you, because if you've invested, then you should be recognized for that. Partners specifically, their partner status will be carried over to Facebook if they want to take that option. And any embers or sparks that they've earned revenue through the channel will be honored for June only. So, they're honoring double payment for the month of June only. So if you do have favorite streamers over on Mixer, make sure they use all those things. Mixer had a thing called open monetization, which is sort of like the affiliate program here for Twitch, where if you had a particular amount of frequency or volume or followership, then you are actually eligible to monetize your stream. So those types of monetizations are also being carried over to Facebook. But I'll be honest with you, it is not one for one. Like it's really kind of a crap deal for gaming streamers. Like I said, the demographics on Facebook gaming right now are not that strong. It's most likely going to be a much stronger opportunity for those streamers to either go back to or switch to Twitch, which of course is where I'm at as an affiliate channel. Twitch is where my exclusivity needs to be as well. I kind of dabbled a little bit in Mixer separately, but it was just more of like an aside or an afterthought. So it wasn't worth it for me. Unfortunately, I wasn't invested in that platform, and frankly, I wouldn't early in the game. If I was looking to diversify that way, I would do it but obviously, I'm kind of pot committed with Twitch like a lot of my friends are. So we'll keep doing what we do. And when you get involved in a bigger platform like that, it comes with stability. It comes with loyalty. And I really do think, unfortunately, that Xbox and Microsoft as a large corporation maybe underestimated that loyalty quotient. And I've seen this. I've worked for a lot of big organizations, global retail organizations who do this. They say, we got a huge bankroll. We can front this for a year. We can push it through with cash. And we hope that when we do it, that we can use cash and our buying power to kind of push us to the forefront. And I think they underestimated what that was going to take to usurp, the undisputed king right now, which is Twitch, right? And that's it. So, oh my God, Seth Chaos, welcome back, my brother. Seth Chaos, hold the phone for a minute. Seth Chaos is one of the first people to ever interact with me on Twitch and be part of this channel. Dude, I'm like full stopped right now. I'm actually a little bit speechless. You're in the U.S. now, Seth? Oh, man, it's good to see your name in chat, buddy. Welcome. Good to see you. We have to catch up. Amazing. So Seth was here when I started streaming with like a hanging camera over my bed, drawing maps by hand with like one standing lamp. So Seth Chaos, the OG. Oh, man, after the hurricane, 190 days, no power. Oh, my God. Where I was just painting, yeah. Whoa, dude. Okay, we got to get caught up. Sorry, that's worth the pause, gang. Seth is a great friend of the channel, and man, that's a blast from the past. Good to see you, man. Glad to see your name in chat. Welcome. We've been a lot more steady this time around, so I've come back to Twitch with a clearly defined schedule and show kind of lineup. So yeah, good to have you, and of course all of you for joining me today. I love to see the folks in chat. Love to have the back and forth, so don't be shy. Let's chat. Moving on in D&D weekly news. Actually, on that note, I am going to segue into the new streaming show and schedule that I kind of announced this week. I talked a little bit about some of the content changes that I'm making. A lot of you who followed me recently probably know that I came out pretty kind of fast and furious. We're publishing like 20 plus content pieces a day on Twitter, and by we I mean me. 6 long form YouTube videos every week, hundreds of hours of editing, post production, thousands and thousands of words written in articles and things like that. So I had to really kind of constrain what I'm going to do. I'm going to start with Twitch. We're going to get back to the norm here. So every Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern, we have Two Play, where Steph and I will get together and play video games together. We either focus on couch co-op two-player games, or we'll pass the controller back on great new first one-player releases like The Last of Us 2. We've been having a really great time with it, passing the controller back and forth, and we have great banter. We have a lot of laughs, so I hope you join us Monday evening. Every second Wednesday, bi-weekly Wednesday evening at 7 p.m., we have what I call the DMs Guild Feature Showcase, which is my community D&D streaming game. We welcome community members to play with me at the table, and that features third-party adventure module content, so adventures and campaigns that are written by some of our great third-party content creators in DMs Guild. And then, of course, Saturday every morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, right here on the Speaking Common D&D Weekly News, DM chat, game prep, game planning, and map making, which we'll get into later in the show. I'm really excited for that to go into my digital map making suite. So this is the schedule that I'm formalized. Of course, all this information on www.shambazelgames.com, which I'll continue to write for. What I also want to stay focused on are these kind of segments, the podcasts that I produce. I return my attention to Charisma Check, Seth, who was with me when we launched Charisma Check as an online streaming actual play, very Critical Role style. It was live in the room, multiple cameras. I moved away from that because it was too much tech to focus on during the game, but we've moved it to a podcast now, so that's available, and I've got episode 5 out for that. So we're going to continue to get back to editing and producing that so I can get it out for you. Good to see you too. We'll hear, that's wonderful to get back people here. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's been really nice. It's been nice, and it's been a great re-entry back into the Twitch, the streamosphere, if you will. So I'm excited about it. I'm going to be turning my focus on this segment, the Speaking Common weekly D&D DM chat and game prep stream, to focus on game preparation, game building, things like that. That's really where I want to put my attention to. So really this evolution is more about me turning back to my roots as a DM and focusing on dungeon mastering, gameplay, game building, design, and all that kind of stuff. And that's where I think I really want to hammer down. So that means I'll be continuing to keep up on the D&D news, but I won't be producing a daily news piece, which is about 500 to 800 words every single day. That saves me about 2 hours in the day. I'll be getting back to my roots in Twitter content, less of the video, every post being a video post, because that's extremely time consuming and actually was costing me the bulk of that 30 plus hours a week I was putting into content. So I'm streamlining that a little bit. Steph and I are going to be bringing music into Two Play. So some of our jam sessions, we're going to be doing things like that, getting a little bit more into music streaming. So what's not changing, what you can still expect, are great DM and player tips every day on Twitter and through our streams. Or my streams, rather. I keep saying our, but it's really me, and this is the challenge. I'm like a one-man shop. But I'm looking into some really great opportunities for partnerships, and I'll really looking forward to sharing that with you when the time is right. We have some really great neighbors and fellow creators in the Twitch community, and they're incredible. I'm super excited about that. I've been doing it alone for a very long time, and I think it's time for me to lean into community a little bit more and participate that way. I don't need to be an island. And I don't need to take on the extra stress that trying to be an island actually creates. So it's about community, right? And I always say that. So it's time for me to take my own advice on that one. So we'll still be doing like question of the day, fill in the blank, DM tips, all that good stuff. So some things to look forward to. We'll continue to do D&D rule solution, as well as the Sage Advice Unfurled compendium breakdown every week. So those are things that I'll look forward to continue doing with you. And then finally, as I mentioned, the last news item I want to hit on is I kind of asked myself this question this week: is D&D fatigue setting in? I think invariably when people really go big and hard on a particular brand like Dungeons and Dragons from Wizards of the Coast, inevitably those audiences and consumers will want to branch out into other flavors. And I found that for myself too. So I petitioned the community this week to let me know what they think are some of the other systems that they really enjoy, that they like to play through. And I had some great feedback. So There are some of the usual suspects in there, like Pathfinder from Paizo. There's Starfinder, of course, under Paizo as well. GURPS, the generic universal role-playing system. As well as some up-and-coming new tabletop role-playing systems as well, like Contingency System, which is developed by a great friend of the show, Josh, of course, at Contingency System, Contingency _ sys. And from that, I kind of whittled down my top 10 list of systems that I wanted to delve into. And I haven't really done the math, so I'm just kind of compiling them. But Fate, always skimmed the Fate and Fate Accelerated system. Esper Genesis was another one that came up. Of course, Vampire the Masquerade. Call of Cthulhu is one that I really want to check out. Powered by the Apocalypse system, which seems really versatile and popular too. Dungeon World and Dungeon Crawl classics on the typical fantasy side. There are a couple of Star Wars platforms that I want to look into that are really exciting too. Of course, Shadowrun, Cypher System, Numenera, and Savage Worlds kind of rounding out that list. So these are all ones that I'm going to look into over the next little while. Just do a little quick summary, and I'll produce a piece on that. So I still want to write, I still want to publish for the website, but I'll probably be doing that one kind of big feature piece every week rather than one news piece every day. And that's what that's going to look like going forward. And expect me to start branching out into other systems. I think I'm going to start with Pathfinder from Paizo because it's a little bit more of a familiar cross-section of the fantasy that I'm used to, a little bit of an easy way to kind of branch and reach out of Dungeons & Dragons. Don't worry, though. I'm still going to be focusing on D&D for my channel. So I'm still like D&D focused. That is going to be my focus. But there's no harm in trying other flavors and introducing other great tabletop opportunities into our set, right? So that is a wrap for the D&D Weekly News this Saturday, June 27th. Lots going on in the news, lots of changes for the channels, and I'm looking forward to what the future of content looks like for Shambazzle Games as we build it together as a community. As I mentioned, if you're not doing so already, toss me a follow on Twitch/Shambazzle Games, and of course Shambazzle Games everywhere on the internet. I look forward to seeing you there, and join me Saturday morning, 11 a.m. Eastern Time for the Speaking Common Weekly News. Let's head back to the bar. So Seth Chaos, I'm interested in the Pathfinder idea. Nice. Yeah, I have to say I'm enjoying even just reading the core rule books from another system. It's really good way to kind of just get your head into something else and expand on what you're experiencing. I think the only good things can come from that, right? What about you folks? What other kind of systems have you played in or are you interested in? I promised myself I was going to keep on my water intake this week because always by the end of the stream my voice is gone. Maybe I talk too much. How I Nerd, I'm excited for Fantasy Flight Games Star Wars coming up. Yeah, Fantasy Flight Games seem to be one of the de facto for Star Wars franchise. And of course, I'm a huge, huge fan of Star Wars. Have been my whole life. I still try to move things with my mind every now and then in the event that hopefully it'll work one of these days. Seth, always thought about you guys. So happy with you. Oh, thank you. Thank you, man. Yeah. OG, much love. Haven't played anymore. Your DM kicked you out and you have no control and not having power. Oh, so was it you couldn't make the game, Seth? And that sucks, dude. Sorry to hear that. Do you have an option to play now lately, or are you playing on Roll20 or anything like that? Jeez. That sucks. And that was all from the hurricane, right? Seth was in Puerto Rico. Is that right, Seth? Do I have that right? Yeah. Came through all that. Thank you. Nice accent. Thank you. Everything I learned from Lin-Manuel Miranda. Yeah, it's like serious note though, like in all the hurricanes and the tragedy that struck down there. Yeah, glad you made it. Glad you made it out of there. And family's doing well, hopefully. Everyone doing okay? We'll have to get you back into rolling dice at some point soon. I'm hoping to make more games available to the community. So yeah, keep an eye out there. I'm mainly on Twitter. I don't know if you're on Twitter, but you'll hear about it here too when I open up those. So yeah, for sure. But baby steps. I think the key. One of the things that I learned is I was taking way too much on, and I wanted to, I say eat the whole elephant. So I gotta, kind of ease my way back into it. Let's talk about DM tips and player tips. And in the interest of keeping the content nice and compact, I'm going to run through these. I'll talk about each one. And of course, as you have thoughts or opinions or anything you want to add on any one of these, don't be shy in chat. Of course, join in. My first DM tip for this week is when you're writing for your stories, try to use as much detail as you can. And then when writing the session notes that you work from, try to keep things very short, sweet, and bullet point oriented. These short, sweet reminders to help you highlight those excellent details to bring into the game in the moment, because it's way easier to reference small, short bullet points than it is to think about all those details. Here's what I mean by that. When I'm writing a story, I'll write in paragraph format. I'll write fully fleshed out ideas that are deeply detailed, so that when I'm reading through them, I get a sense of what I'm thinking in that story. Very narrative based. But when I'm writing session notes for me to use, prompt, and cue me while in a session, I concentrate them down to short details. So, something like the governor of Tudumbarum is deeply corrupt. He's taken payments from the Zentarum over the last 4 months and is very easily swayed by the promise of gold or prestige in equal strengths. But my session note for that might be Gov Tanumbarum plied by coin and promise of victory in league with Zent. Right? It's very short, sweet. That kind of lets me recall the things that I wrote very quickly. Because when you're in the moment of running a session, as we know, adrenaline's kind of running. You got 1,000 things to keep track of. You don't have all the time to kind of read through a paragraph, paraphrase it in your mind, and then deliver it to your players. So keeping things very short and sweet and bullet points allows you to quick reference those things, keep the story on track, and remember those fine details that will invariably affect the world and the stories that your players are playing through and building with you. That's a great idea. Fair good. Good. That one's going over well. Seth Gas, yes, family doing well. You're closer to us in Pennsylvania. Oh, thank you, Seth. That's awesome. What's your Twitter handle? Of course, if you want to join me on Twitter for those updates, please do check me out there. Everything I do goes out through Twitter. I'm always kind of publishing new content out there too. Yeah, let me know what your handle is, Seth, so I can keep an eye out for you. And, of course, if you are joining, you want to help us get the word out, we would love to share the Speaking Common and the streaming experience with as many people as we can. Please do give this a quick click. It's a one-click pre-baked tweet. It'll populate it. You can just send it right from there. Very much appreciate you helping me get the word out this morning. Ask Love and Passion, not appropriate with streaming someone else. Oh, gotcha. Duly noted. Yes, so next, my second D&D DM tip for the week is to remember that everyone at the table wants you to be successful. They're in your corner, so don't stress, don't overthink the game. Have fun, laugh with your table, and just enjoy it every chance that you get. What I hear most from folks who are looking to venture into the DM or GM territory is that they're always very hesitant because they want to make sure they do it right, or they're afraid they'll do it wrong. Everyone there wants you to have a good time. They're all rooting for you. They're in your corner. No one's looking for you to fail in those scenarios. So in the back of your mind, just remember that the people you're there to play with and deliver gaming experiences for, they want you to be excited. They are excited going into it. Positivity is really high, and there's very little that you can do wrong as long as you just relax and go with the flow. Have fun. And if the people around your table are laughing and having a good time, then you can just sit back and enjoy that. Don't force the game. Sit in those moments and enjoy them when your players are just bantering back and forth, even if they're just joking about something else. Because at the end of the day, at the conclusion of that game session, if everybody had a good time, then that's what it's all about. So you've done it right. Don't worry too much. Don't worry so much. Sometimes I forget how to do the words. Like my brain is going too fast for my mouth. The tip of the tongue, the teeth, the lips, the tip of the tongue, the teeth, the lips. Get my vocal warm-ups in. See, told you we were doing music. Told you we were going musical. Third D&D tip this week. Remember, bad guys think they're good guys in their own mind. This goes back to what we were saying, and of course, things that are inherently evil being a hot button topic and something that needs attention through much debate. What would your big bads be willing to do to achieve what they believe is right? It's far more nuanced and interesting to play villainous characters from the perspective of that they just want to do what they believe is the right thing to do. So they're pushing for and fighting for things that they want to happen that they believe is for the greater benefit for whoever or whatever they serve. When you get into that kind of mentality of looking behind the eyes of your big bads, it makes them far more engaging, complex, and interesting adversaries for the players at your table. Doing bad things for the right reason. Thanos is a perfect example. Is Thanos inherently evil? I don't believe so. I think Thanos is trying to do what he can do, taking into power the only power he has to try and correct, I guess, things that are insolvent in the universe, right? Yeah. Bad guys are far more interesting when they are played as individuals or groups who are just fighting towards something that they believe is right. Then it just becomes a matter of perception, right? Yeah, he's not evil in your book, Seth. They always have a good backstory. Yeah, flesh out your big bads. They should have motivations. They should have histories. At what point did they reach the turning of what would be considered good versus something that's evil and willful? All right, moving on with tips this week. My first player tip for you is don't use your face to check for traps. My players seem to learn this the hard way every single time. If you're entering a new environment or searching an area, always make sure to keep an eye out for things in the environment that are just a little bit off. Check for traps. Try and identify those threats and hazards to the party, and they will thank you for it later. Don't do it by running into a room. I've had experiences where players will very carefully approach an environment, find traps or not, but do everything they can to try and mitigate that environmental damage or those hazards that exist in a dungeon or an area. And I've also had players who run headlong through it, no concern or regard for danger. And then they get really upset when they get melted by acid or something like that. So don't use your face to check for traps. Use your skills. And my second player tip of the week is to get excited for your fellow players' backstories and exchanges at the table. Even when the spotlight's not on you, when someone else has the stage and they're playing through important parts of the narrative or interacting with NPCs in the game, you never know what important pieces you can pick up in those exchanges. So dial in, tune in, give them the space, and be a good audience member and a good player for them too. You never know what you might pick up or what you might learn about these people that you could be playing with for years to come. So listen up and spend some time getting excited for their stories, just like you would want them to be excited for yours. Leron Jenkins, Bitmage78, welcome. Good to see you. Good to see you. Indeed. Yeah, don't Leroy. Leroy approach is not a good way to check for traps, y'all. So don't do it. I don't like doing that. Welcome. If you're just joining, throw me a follow, show me some love, speak up in chat, be engaged, interact with me. If you have any questions or thoughts or comments on any of this, of course, we're all about the back and the forth here on Speaking Comments, so don't hesitate. And with that, I would like to introduce you to a little segment on the show that we call D&D Rule Solution, where we explore the uncleared corners of the Player's Handbook and other official source books from Wizards of the Coast for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Let's do it! D&D Rule Solution. Sorry, I can't read my own notes. D&D Rule Solution is a segment of the show where we really go through page by page some of the things in the Player's Handbook and anything else that's officially published that may be overlooked in the gameplay, of course. So you get your handbook, you go right to the places that you need, but there's a lot of really great information in there that a lot of people gloss over. So we always start this segment with a little who's who of Dungeons & Dragons, where we go through the team and the people who are responsible for creating this great game. And today on Who's Who for Rule Solution is Kate Irwin. Kate is the senior art director for Wizards of the Coast. Her name and fingerprints are all over pretty much anything that's ever been published for D&D 5e, as well as a number of things previous to 5e. So if you like that cover of Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frost Maiden, or you really love the art style in Ghosts of Saltmarsh, Tomb of Annihilation, literally any of it, then Kate Irwin's had some kind of say in the look, tone, and feel of those brand items and accessories. She's also has oversight. She also drives oversight and art direction on licensed products for D&D, including video games. So Kate's very close to how art style is implemented or developed for D&D video games also. So you might see her name in a lot of those credits. She's a little more quiet than, your Chris Perkins or your Jeremy Crawfords, but she's a huge player in the actual end product that we use to experience these games. She's also actually directed art and design on many of Wizards of the Coast's officially published DM's Guild materials like Murder at Baldur's Gate and a host of other D&D products that precede D&D 5e, right previous to and including 3.5e D&D. So she's been with the company for a long time. She's got a lot of great chops in the art design and developing the look of these products. And that is the world of Kate Irwin. Moving along with D&D Rule Solution this week, we're going to talk about the worlds of Dungeons & Dragons and what's exactly involved. So all the settings that come together to comprise the worlds that surround Dungeons & Dragons as a game are rooted in high fantasy medieval environments primarily, and that's called out specifically in the Player's Handbook. And the collection of all these D&D worlds is referred to as the multiverse. So when you hear people talk about the multiverse, it's really any and every world that's concocted, fabricated, and created in the D&D scape. This collection of worlds, they're all connected together via various means, whether it's magical portals, rips in the weave, or intraplanar travel, astral travel, things like that. So when you see things kind of teleporting to and from different worlds or cataclysmic events that draw these worlds together. And this includes extraplanar worlds like the Plane of Fire or the infinite depths of the abyss, the Nine Hells. All of these are all encompassed in that multiverse approach to the many worlds that make up D&D. So some of the specific game world settings that you may or may not have heard about that are officially published or were officially published by Wizards for D&D include the Forgotten Realms, of course, one of the most popular game world settings. Dragonlance, which is tremendously freaking awesome too. Dragonlance tends to be a little bit more high fantasy in my opinion. Greyhawk, which is a little bit more we'll say guttural and gritty, I would say, of the fantasy settings. There's Dark Sun, of course, the very popular world of Athos, the sun-baked desert setting. And there's also Mystara and, of course, Eberron. And now with the addition of the Explorer's Guide to Wildemount, they've actually brought Exandria into that Matt Mercer's brainchild too. So all of these worlds would be considered part of that extraplanar or that multiplanar multiverse of world settings. And they do say that it includes anything that you imagine and create, of course. As we know, that's always in your hands as a game master and player. Each of these worlds have a different take on races, cultures, civilizations, etc. For example, halflings in Dark Sun are actually jungle-dwelling cannibals. They're a little bit more feral, you might say, in Dark Sun, giving them a distinctly different flair than the halflings that we are used to, the jovial sort of, party folk, I guess. I don't know what I'm trying to say there. Elves, on the other hand, are desert roaming nomads in Dark Sun 2, so they're a little bit more introspective, a little bit more secluded. And then, of course, other worlds boast completely new races that are typically not seen out of those planes, like the Warforged of Eberron. So lots of different nuances and options for cultural opportunities, races, and applications in the various worlds that comprise the multiverse. Continuing on with D&D rules solution, I want to talk a little bit about the formula that comprises a typical D&D interaction. So last week we talked about sort of the narrative of a scene, a sample scene that might play out between the D&D players, between a DM and their players. But these can really be whittled down to a simple interactive formula, and that it's not really about the rules that govern what you can do, as much as it is how to describe anything that you want to do. I always enforce this with my players. It's not about asking me what you can do; it's about telling me what you want to do, and then there are a set of checks and descriptions of the outcomes of those actions. So very simply put, it comes in three parts. The DM describes the environment, the surroundings that the players are in. The players describe what they want to do or would like to try to do. And then the DM describes the results or outcomes based on whatever checks are necessary to flesh out that experience. So this applies not only to acting within the world or interacting with NPCs and role-playing conversations, but it also applies to combat. So you describe a scenario, player describes what they want to do, DM describes the outcome. Why is that important? It keeps things fluid. And if the DM and players have an understanding of how that typical basic formula plays out, you can eliminate a lot of those opportunities where people are struggling to figure out what they should be doing. If you just always go back to that simple formula and use it to drive how you interact with the world. And over time, or pretty soon thereafter, you won't even think about it. It'll be so natural to you. It'll just be super clean and fluid. Beyond that, of course, D&D is a game that's played with dice. So we're going to talk a little bit about dice rolls, the roll of the dice, literal roll of the dice, and rules resolution in the game. So like I said, these games are played with polyhedral or RPG dice, as they're called. The most frequently used, of course, is D20, which is used for skill checks, including skills, attacks, and saving throws. We know a lot of this. So what's new in this? Skill rolls are modifiers. Then those modifiers and the rolls are compared to a difficulty class, which is where the acronym DC comes from, and as well as saving throws. And there's a special skill check called an attack, which goes against an armor class. So an AC is basically the DC of your combat check. So this is how the dice kind of mediate or meter out those rules. For rules consideration, when you're stuck on whether or not a rule applies, always go back to the simple basic rule on rules, which is that specific always beats general. So an example of how that works is think about elves. Elves are proficient in longbow, but monks are not, because a longbow qualifies as a martial weapon. So the specific rule about elves being proficient in longbow precedes the general rule about monks not being able to use longbows. So in that case, an elven monk would be able to use a longbow because the specific rule beats a general rule every time. And that's a good way to kind of check the rules in the moment if you're unsure about how something should play out. Of course, we go much deeper on rules and hotly contested rules in Sage Advice Unfurled, coming up in the next segment. So some other rules that happen around the rolls and how we sort of math out the outcomes is to always roll down. So this is another one. Unless something specifically says in a rule, ability, or outcome that the result is rounded up, you always round down. So for example, if you save against Fireball and you take half damage, and that Fireball deals 21 damage, then you round down to take 10 damage total. So if there's ever an odd number outcome and you need to round that by half or a quarter, always round down for the outcome. Finally, in D&D Rule Solution this week, I'm actually going to set up where we're going next with future segments. We're starting to move into character creation section of the PHB now, so we're going to go a lot deeper on actual classes, races, compositions, how to build character, and things like that. So I'm really excited to share that with you. So party balance in that is usually something that comes up. It's a bit of a misnomer, especially in 5e. You don't really need the holy trinity, as we say, which is like tank, healer, damage. It's really open for you to do and play whatever you want. Then there are tons of mechanics to make any party viable, really. So party balances is a bit of a misnomer. While I know a lot of players would like to get an idea of who's in the party so they can sort of flesh it out and make sure that you've got somebody who can soak damage and someone who can deal damage and someone to heal the party if and as needed. But they aren't tropes that you have to play into in order to have a good time or have a well-rounded party. So like I said, next week we're going to be delving deep into character creation, balance, items, abilities, features, compositions, races, builds, backgrounds, and all things in between. So stay tuned for that next week on D&D Rule Solution. And that is the end of that segment. So in between every segment, I like to go back to the bar, get refreshed. So I hope you'll join me there. Let's do it. And you do need to keep up with my water, of course. Got to give the old voice a break. Very soon we'll be jumping into the second half of the stream where we will get into map making specifically today. So in map making, what we're going to be working on is a huge map. We're going to do basically a big master map for random encounters. We're going to do it in a forest setting. Like I said, I use two main tools in my digital setup. Those are Flowscape and Arkenforge. And I'm really excited to share that with you because I have a lot of fun doing that stuff. And I think you'll enjoy it as well. I hope you'll enjoy it as well. So we're moments away from that. With that, I have one more segment that I record every Saturday to create new content for the crew. And that is Sage Advice Unfurled. And in Sage Advice Unfurled, we take a look specifically at the Sage Advice Compendium. We look at some of the most hotly contested rules in D&D 5e, and it looks like this. Welcome to another segment of Sage Advice Unfurled, where we determine or discuss some of the most hotly contested rules in Dungeons & Dragons 5e. Now, this is a compendium that's maintained by Jeremy Crawford, who's the lead rules designer for 5e, and it's actually considered official ruling. So D&D Sage Advice actually takes precedent over any statements that are made out in the public forum. Like if Jeremy says something on his Twitter, those rules are actually superseded by the Sage Advice Unfurled or Sage Advice Compendium. So we go through that in a little bit more detail, a very specific manner. And the first thing we're looking at this week is class features, particularly the use of extra attack. So when you have an extra attack or a second attack, can you use multiple weapons to execute that extra attack, or do you have to use the same weapon twice or multiple times? According to Sage Advice, there's no real limitation on what weapons you can use in an extra attack. So you can use a sword and a fist, two swords. Your second attack can be anything that you have access to and can use. The only limitations that might play are whether or not you can actually draw that weapon. So your DM, according to the rules, might not allow you to like attack with a sword, then sheathe that sword, pull a bow, knock an arrow, and use your second or your extra attack as an arrow attack. So you'll want to make sure that you and your DM are clear on that. But beyond that, you can use regular weapons, improvised weapons, unarmed strikes, or a combination of any of the above for your extra attack. The only limitation, like I said, is whether you can actually unsheath or sheath a weapon to make that happen. Keep in mind, too, and remember that the grapple action is an attack. So you can use one of your attacks to make a grapple to grab an enemy and the other to attack an enemy. So get creative in how you're mixing up the actual actions that you're taking with your extra attack. The only caveat is they have to be attacks. Next up on D&D Sage Advice Unfurled, we're looking at Barbarian specifics. Two items in Barbarian that are hotly contested. One is Danger Sense. Danger Sense effectively works against breath weapons, any special abilities. So the idea was whether or not Danger Sense can help a Barbarian combat the effects of, let's say, a breath weapon or even a special ability that's not specifically a spell. The stipulation for Barbarian's Danger Sense is simply that the Barbarian must be able to see the attack or understand where it's coming from. And if you can see that attack, then you can use Danger Sense to mitigate the damage, provided that it requires a dexterity check. So any ability, effect, spell, or otherwise that requires a dexterity check can be mitigated with Danger Sense. The only caveat, like I said, is the Barbarian has to see it coming. A couple of other things to keep in mind that are often overlooked. The Barbarian also can't be blinded or deafened in order to use dangerous sense. So, of course, if you're blinded, you can't see where the attack is coming. But a lot of people don't know that even if you're deafened, then you can't use dangerous sense as well. So, something to keep in mind. And, of course, if you're incapacitated or unconscious, you can't use dangerous sense to avoid attacks either. Dr. Feargood, I love Flowscape, but the new Incarnate update for battle maps is great. Nice. I haven't looked into those. I'm open to kind of checking out other platforms too, so I'll have to see what's going on over there in Incarnate. And there's another one that's called like Dungeon Drafter or some Dungeon Draft, something like that. So there are a few out there that work well. Second item up on D&D Sage Advice Unfurled. Again, with barbarians, we're talking about use of reckless attack. And the question was, can reckless attack offer advantage on any enemy that attacks a barbarian who's using reckless attack, or only the target of that barbarian's reckless attack? And the answer is any enemy who makes an attack on a barbarian who's used reckless attack for that turn gains advantage on the attack against that barbarian. So that advantage applies to all enemies regardless of who the barbarian's attacking. So think about it this way: the barbarian executes a reckless attack. From that moment forward, he or she is vulnerable because of the nature of that attack, which means anyone who's attacking him, including ranged attacks, get advantage against the barbarian in that case. So keep in mind, all attacks apply, not just the target that the barbarian is attacking in that moment. Next up on D&D Rules Solution, we're talking about Bardic Inspiration and how it applies. Specifically, can Bardic Inspiration stack with other effects that are similar to, but not quite Bardic Inspiration? And the answer is Bardic Inspiration stacks with any effect that gives a like benefit, as long as it is of a different name. So more specifically, Bardic Inspiration, say it offers a D6, does stack with a spell like Guidance, which gives you a D4 to use in a similar manner. You can use both those inspirations together. They will stack. However, you can't, say, enjoy Bardic Inspiration from two different bards, because effectively they're both the same ability, they share the same name, so you can't stack Bardic Inspiration on top of other Bardic Inspiration. Similarly, if you had a magic equipment or gear that offered you Bardic Inspiration and it was called offers Bardic Inspiration, then that would also not stack with Bardic Inspiration. However, if it gave you an effect called Bolster Morale that was also a D6, then that would stack with Bardic Inspiration. The determining factor there is they can't be named the same or from the same effect. And finally on D&D, what am I doing here? Finally on Sage... Did I say Unearthed Arcana earlier? I'm going to have to go back and double check that. Maybe I'm creating more editing for myself. Anyway, get it together, Sham. Next up on Sage Advice Unfurled, we're continuing the conversation around bards, specifically around use of cutting words. This is one that has created some confusion around my table. So if you have a College of Lore bard, they have an effect called cutting words that allows them to almost use inspiration in another way, where you can either reduce the attack roll of a pending attacker or the damage roll of incoming damage based on your inspiration die. So the stipulation, though, is if you're using cutting words to lower an attack roll that's coming at you, you have to declare that you're going to use it before the result of the roll is known. Now, a lot of the confusion that comes around this is where players feel like, well, how do I know if I want to use it if I don't know if the attack hits or not? That exactly is the point. You don't know if the attack's going to hit. So as soon as a creature attacks you, DM rolls that dice, you need to declare, I'm going to use my cutting words to reduce the attack. The minute the roll is made known, you as a player will know if it attacks because you know your own armor class, and it's too late at that point, unfortunately, bards, to use your cutting words. What you can do in that moment then is use your cutting words to reduce the damage. So any source of damage that comes at you, whether it requires an attack roll or not, any damage that requires at least a damage roll can be subjected to your cutting words, including Magic Missile, Fireball, Dragon Breath, anything like that. If you have to roll a dice for damage, then you can use your cutting words to reduce that damage. So remember, two applications of cutting words. If you're using it to reduce an incoming attack, you need to declare that you're using cutting words as soon as you know you're being attacked. And second, if you miss that opportunity, you can also use cutting words, or at any time you can use cutting words to actually reduce the actual damage once the roll is made. So that's how you use it. That's it, gang. That's a wrap on Sage Advice. We did Rule Solution. We did our DM tips. We did our D&D Weekly News. All of our homework is complete. Let's go back to the bar and talk about Section 2 of the D&D Weekly Cast, which includes everything about game prep planning, and today a specific focus on map making. Let's get to it. So, who's ready to do some game stuff? I am. I'm looking forward to making maps. Today, like I said, we're going to be doing, I'm going to show you my digital map making suite. So for the next couple hours, we're going to focus on map making, specifically random encounter maps. So we're going to get into building a forest setting. It's going to be a huge map, multiple locations in this woodland setting. So I'd love for you, chat, to help me out, come up with ideas that you want this map, and we'll make it together. So while we're doing that, let me just get the things going here. Close down all the things I don't need and focus on the things I do. As we load up Flowscape. And I'm excited because the creators of Flowscape have hooked me up with some keys to give away. So in future streams, we're going to get back into some of those perks and benefits for our folks. We'll be giving away keys to this software. So if you like to make maps, as I do, you want to check in on those streams, and we'll announce them when they're coming up. You can enter, and we'll be giving away keys to the platform. Additionally, I have a key for Arkenforge, which you're going to see at the end of this too. So how these two platforms work together is Flowscape is kind of like my world building, my regional map making item. And then Arkenforge is where we go in and we kind of create more of like an encounter map around it. That'll make sense in a moment when we get to it. But without further ado, let us go to, where's my map making scene? Just like this. Come along with me, won't you? As Flowscape loads up, and hopefully it won't. I tested this last week, so the first time I did this, it kicked the crap out of my CPU, but I was not using my graphics processing unit, and that was my misstep. How I knew it, I use Incarnate and Dungeon Draft currently. Very nice, very nice. Yeah, Dungeon Draft. That's the one I was trying to remember earlier. That looks like a great tool, too. Very quick. Quick and thorough. I enjoy it. Yeah. So once the powers of Flowscape allow us to get in here, every Flowscape starts with a palette. So it's going to give us kind of a prefab tile. And when we see that tile, it will be pre-populated with a lot of furniture, we'll say. So items that are on screen, and I'm vamping while Flowscape does its thing. You see I've got the spinning circle of death here. There we go. So it's going to pre-populate a tile for us to get started. Fill it with some things. And the first thing I usually do is delete all of it. Delete everything. So you get a sense of scale here, right? We'll stay here. This is good. Oh, crap. I wanted to clear all that, but that's okay. So this gives us a sense of scale, right? And this does not look like a large piece of land, but it's really up to us to scale this. I can make this tile look like a huge spread of land, and that's what we're going to do today. First thing I need to reset this or clear it. And let's do it another way. See, can I just clear this? The other thing I'll show you once we get this complete, of course, we can build it in a 3D setting, but what we want for game, of course, is an ortho, which gives us overhead. And then we can, whoops, yeah. Then we can overlay a grid on here, and we can make that grid whatever size we want. So suddenly this will give us a sense of scale that we're building for the map. So we'll see that all come together. So can you drop a non-affiliate link for Humble? It's a mapping deal. Let me hold off on that one because I do want to focus on Flowscape at the moment. They're hooking up a little bit, so I want to make sure we're showcasing that. But another time, indeed. And I'll be happy to share it out if you want me to share it out over the Twitters and stuff like that. Definitely. Thank you for asking, though. Appreciate it. Humble bundle for Cartographer 3. Nice. You're still making your castle, Fear? Perfect, man. Yes, thank you. That'd be awesome. So Fear actually picked this up after watching this stream one day, right, Fear? And he's been playing around with it, working on a castle, you said. That's pretty awesome. Very slick. Very slick. Roger that. Confirming receipt of link. Happy to share it out. I'm going to clear all the plants this sort of way. So we're just going to reset the tile here. All right. So the first thing we're going to do, like I said, this is going to be, we're doing a large scale map with multiple random encounters. Then we're going to bring that out. We'll export it. We'll bring it into Roll20. And then we will, it will be playable from that point forward. So the first thing we want to do is determine our ground mask. Let's see. I'm feeling that this might be like kind of a lush-ish forest. So maybe it's, got some sparseness in the grass, but otherwise pretty rich. The riverbed we'll choose later when we bring some water into this, but I'm going to change the mask a bit too, so we can make this as sparse or as thick as we like. Let's go here. There's no snow. We don't want snow in this, so. And I will. There we go. I want to add water so we can see where this is. There we go. So later when I start to carve water into this thing, that will help me. Let's get rid of this. Get rid of this. We're done here. Okay. What kinds of things are in our forest setting? So I want this to be mainly a sprawling forest, but with little kind of points of interest within. So let me see how we're going to sculpt this down. And you guys throw out any ideas that you want to see represented in our forest, whether it's like a waterfall, a pond, some forgotten ruins, anything like that. And I'll just start building the base of the forest floor here. First of all, I'm going to flatten this a little bit. Okay. Thanks for showing the program. Also making a 2-layer map, the above and underground. Very nice. They've actually, the devs were telling me that they've introduced a lot of like dungeon. Oops, that's not what I meant to do. Oh, what did I do? What have I done? What have I done? You turned her against me. Okay, what the H? I may have screwed up the things, y'all. Let's do this. All right, that's okay. That's okay. We can recover from this. We can recover from this. Always important to save regularly. There we go. Let me see if this is correct. I figure out how to get my water in here. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. There we go. Okay. Just so I know I can make water. Pro styles. All pro styles. Go. Gotta just raise this a little bit. Flatten that out. There's also an option to just do a flat layer, but I like the depth. I like being able to create different depths and such. So it is important. Make sure we don't put this right underwater. There we go. Stonehenge in the middle of the forest with patches of flowers. If there's any type of rocks for the decorations. Yeah, there definitely are. Okay. So what about the devs? Oh, the devs were saying that they were implementing some new dungeon-specific building functions into the tool. Yeah, and I haven't watched the video yet, but sounds exciting to me. All right, I'm not sure how I can do like paths, like rocky paths. I might do that in the next tool, which is Arkenforge. All right, so let's find a little Stonehenge type place. This will help really kind of clarify the scale that we want. And let's do this. Let's do it here. Make a small kind of valley-esque. You can start to see the riverbed peeking through here, and we don't want water here. So, all right, let's find our scale. What do we want for scale here? Add a little rock. Want some. I'll just sink this down a little bit. And let's see what we've got for Stonehenge type rocks. That works. Okay. Let's see if we can take a couple of these. This one I like too. Like kind of ruins, you think? Fear? Something like that. Maybe this one can be kind of a ruined one. One that's been toppled over. Oops. With the 3D, there's so much you can do with it. So let's take a look at scale. This might be a touch large. So I'm actually just going to shrink these down a little bit. Oops, that's not right. There we go. Those look good. Now I know it can be done. Indeed. There's very little you cannot do here. from what I've seen. If we do, no, let's stick with this. I like these. All I'm doing is kind of like clicking in to get the kind of rocks I want. I can delete the ones I don't, right? Like this. Oops. You know. This one I'll keep. This looks like a Stonehenge rock. Put it on the ground here. And then let's do one that's kind of like fallen over or broken. And then we'll do some like rubble around it. Yeah. Oh, yeah. All right, we got a little Stonehenge kind of spot here. Drop some leaves around it. Drop some rocks. Some branches, some brambles. It's been forgotten, right? So let's make these a little bit bigger. Get some space here. All right, we'll just do like the ground level stuff first, and then we'll do trees and stuff to kind of flesh it all out. All right, let's see how this looks for scale. Is this the kind of scale we want? Yeah, that looks pretty good. Right? What else do we want in our forests? In our, what other kind of points of interest do we want? What about like an abandoned campsite? I'm going to do an abandoned campsite here. Let's flatten this a little bit. Of course, we need some kind of pond, right? So let's give them the benefit of the doubt and say they were smart enough to camp near a pond. Maybe even we have like a little river coming in this way. Oops. And there's just a little abandoned campsite here. What do we have for campsites? Oops. Here we go. There we go. Huh. There we go. Wait, what the hell? How did I get to that? we go. Little tent. We don't really want the campfire to be lit up if it's abandoned, right? So let's say this is kind of overgrown. Let's see how that is for scale. That looks all right. I feel like this little pond looks weirdly deep, so I'm going to try and correct that a little bit. Maybe what we need to do is reduce the terrain height a little bit. Ever so slightly, but I don't want to drown my Stonehenge over there either. There we go. All right, so these tents are a little big, I think. That's all right. We'll just shrink these down. And rotate them a bit so that they are flush with the ground. They're not floating tents, I believe. There we go. There we go. And we'll do a little fire and some set dressings in the next tool, which is Arkenforge. All right, just for kicks, let's take a look at it overhead. There we go. It's coming together. Got our little campsite here, our little Stonehenge area. Might want to dig this river out a little bit more. So let's do that real quick. There we go. Maybe this river kind of continues on through the woods. Just going to kind of draw a path here. And we'll make this go kind of off-site. Actually, up here it might be cool to have like a little waterfall type thing happening. So do a bit of a bigger body of water here. Carry that right off the map. Okay. Oops. I wonder what will happen if we turn this into more oceanic water. One of the things I want to do is change the angle on my lighting because I'm not super... Actually, the first thing I want to do is save this project. Don't forget to save frequently. All right, and then we're going to... I'm going to play with the water, actually, just to see... Yeah, okay. That's a little bit better. I think we want less waves, though. We want it to be a little calmer. So drag this right down. Maybe a little less chop. I really want foam. Reflection's okay. There we go. Just changing the color of the water here. Whoops. All right, that I think looks a little bit better. Don't worry too much about the fact that it looks like it totally... it's an island. Because it won't be when we actually complete this. It will look more like this. There we go. All right, so that's a little bit better for the water. I'm going to change the sun intensity a little bit. There we go. Where's my height? Oh, here it is. Yeah, there we go. Change the direction a bit, I think. I don't want it to seem like... there we go. Changing the height and upping the intensity. We want it to be like bright. We want it to be daytime, but we don't want... We want to be able to see the water, right? Make out the detail in the water. There we go. Much better. All right, let's go back to 3D. Woo! Blech! Okay, come on. I don't know how I wound up so high. In the sky, that is. All right. Okay, so we're getting there. The minute we add water, it does add a little bit of chop because it's rendering all that stuff around it. And I'm not sure. I should be able to change that, shouldn't I? Oops, shit. Hey, there we go. That's handy. Wait until you get shoved underwater. Yeah, and if you go into like first person view and then it's suddenly there we go. Oh, what happened there? It suddenly decides that you're falling through the world. Small price to pay, I say. Sorry, I just want to double check, make sure that is... This still works. Because everything changes when you go into ortho view. So. Crap. This is why you definitely need to save, because it does weird shit like this sometimes. Like, I don't know why it just did that to me. Oh, there we go. Just sunk my just dropped my terrain a bit, that's all. All right, we're okay. We're okay. Give me a small heart attack. All right. All right, what else? What else do we want to add in here? I wanted to do like a little, I wanted to do a little waterfall. Now, I don't know. Oh, shit. Oh, my God. Okay, we're flying down again. I'm going to try to do a little bit of like a mountain range. Not a mountain range, but I want like a cliff because we want the waterfall to come from somewhere, obviously. So let's see how we can do that. I'm not sure, actually. We're going to have to experiment a little bit. How would I do a waterfall? Yeah, we'll have to experiment. I have put ships on the map. The ships don't float on the water? Really? Yeah, I've put ships in before. Oh, weird. Weird. Interesting. Yeah, the collision is a little messed up there. I have done it before, though, but yeah, that's weird. I guess I just dropped a whole bunch of ships off the map. Where did they go? Down there somewhere. Oh, well. Bye. I have done it before, though. Is it this one, maybe? Yeah, that's what it was. But it was, I guess they're not dynamic then, right? Not all of them, just certain, just the cool ones. I might shoot a note to them and ask them about that, actually. All right, waterfall. There is a way to do terrain stuff here. So something like this might work. Also, we got these are for making large region maps, but they might work for our purposes here too. Let's try this. Might not work. We'll try it. We'll save it first. As mentioned earlier. Let's see. I'm going to rotate this way. Just bear with me here. There's a method to my madness. So it looks a little janky here, but you won't see that when I crop it. Okay. So when I crop this, it's going to look like this, though, right? It'll be cut off, whoops, right there. So that kind of works for what we want to do. Let's see. Then we're going to do... some large rocks to kind of fill it out. I think we'll do these sort of plateau style rocks. if I can sculpt that tile. No, I guess not. There we go. Now we're playing with fire. And then what we'll do is in the next tool, we'll create a waterfall that actually spills into this. That's going to be tricky, but it'll be fun to do. All right. I think we should sculpt this out a little bit more. Just like a little tributary that kind of winds down around here. Okay. And let's do a little bridge. A happy little bridge. Maybe an old bridge that goes over here. How can we make that? There we go. What else we got here to flesh this out a little bit? Make it look a little more bridge-like. Keep in mind that overhead, that's going to look very different, right? So, there we go. Every now and then at points, if you're doing an overhead map, you want to change like back and forth just to kind of get a sense. Like the scale here is obviously way too big right now. I want to make this a little bit thinner. All right. There we go. It's a little bit bigger, a little bit better. It still looks big and kind of ominous, but a little less ridiculous. What else do we have here? I could put some stuff around here. We do put a small, nah, I want a boat there. Make this a bit smaller. Oh, that's as small as it goes. I have to do the rest by hand. Okay, what other kind of points of interest do we need? Nice program. Yeah, this is great, Seth. I like this a lot. I have to go. It's adventuring time. Fear good. Have a great game. Enjoy your weekend. Thanks for swinging by and hanging out with us today. Much appreciate your time. Hopefully we'll see you again soon. All right, what else do we want in our forest? Our forest of feelings. What are some other things? Maybe a small, like, village? An old village? Yeah, I think we'll do that. Never know you could do that with it? Yeah, you gotta resize it, manipulate it. All that kind of stuff. We do a little kind of like rundown area here. Like a little kind of abandoned village or something built around this pond. Kind of leads up to the hillside here. This little kind of valley setting. All right, let's just use those rocks for scale. Okay. Let's these are about as small as they can go. So we'll make these a little smaller. Cart here. Okay, now let's resize all of this because it's way too big by comparison, I think. Yeah. Get a bit smaller. Up, up, up. Whoa. Oh, sorry about the rough piloting there. Okay, what else we got? Yeah, shrink this guy down a little bit. Let's put a little ship down here. Let's give him a dock of some sort. Yeah. Clearly a little too large to be practical. Go. Now we are cooking with the fire, yes? This is probably like way more detail than you're ever going to see top down, but what the hell, you know? Like a little... broken one. Little busted up boat that's on the shore there. Let's take a look. Okay. Little kind of shanty town somewhere in the woods. Right. So we got a little campsite. We have a bridge here. We're going to have a waterfall. We have this little kind of Stonehenge-y type thing going on. And beyond that, we just want to make like a lot of forest land. So here's our woods. It's not much of wood without trees though, right? So let's start to dress it now that we've got kind of the base done. First, I'm going to do twigs and such. Yeah. So we're just going to throw these all over the forest floor. We need some rocks, so let me just check these for scale. I think these can be a little bit bigger. There we go. That's better. Drop some rocks on the forest floor here. What we're doing here is with the benefit of like building a large environment, that we can section it out for smaller random encounter maps. So effectively, by making one large map, we're really making like 8 or 9 smaller maps that we can section out here. That's the idea, anyway. That's the idea. These are, I think, just fallen stumps and such. Yeah, so definitely want a few of those around. But we'll go light with this one because they can be, right, a little bit much if you put too much of them around. Starting to look like a forest floor a little bit. And these will fall into the water too and dress the bottom of the lake. All right. Then maybe a couple of standing stones here. That's really big. So around here where we have like mountainside and cliffside, we'll add some rocks, some stone formations. Not too much, just enough. What else do we see on the forest floor? Some leaves, maybe? How are we doing here with those? Let's see what these look like. Maybe just drop leaves. Not quite sure how that works. Maybe it's this one. All right, these are animated leaves falling, which are great for animated maps, but not so much for static maps like the ones that we're building here. So there's some fungal growth here. It's a light touch, but worth doing. So I don't know if we'll really appreciate these in the top-down maps, but just throw a few around here. All right, then let's talk flowers. This would be nice to kind of brighten it up a little bit, especially along like riverbanks and things like that, just to help define the environment a little bit more. So I'm going to do these all along the river. I think I'm going to make like a little kind of floral valley here. Good way for me to test out my flowers too. All right, we'll do some reeds along the riverbank here too. Let's see how this is looking. I need to get closer. Okay. This can probably be a little bit bigger. Okay, that's interesting. That created an interesting effect. They're kind of growing sideways out into the water, but that's okay. get some color in here. Actually, what's this? Yeah. Some of that. Oops, I want to get down here on my little floral spot. There we go. And we'll open this up with some trees around it when we get there. All right, we'll do some underbrush. Some of the less traversed areas of the forest. And then it will be time to put down some trees. There's some areas where I definitely want to make this thicker. So let's try this up here and see how it works out. Just to give it some shape, some contour. Then we are almost ready for trees. A little bit of underbrush here. Let me see how this is looking. Yeah. There we go. Just fill it out. And there's not really a great way for me to do like pathing, like dirt trails and stuff here. So I'm gonna see if I can do that in the other one. In the second tool that I'm gonna bring this all into. Yeah, I don't think there's a really good option for just like dirt paths. Is there? Unless there's something like this. Let's see. This is like furniture and stuff mainly. Props. Not really what I'm looking for. Unless we do like tons of rocks. Let's play with that. Let's see if I can do... I'll test it over here, making like a path. But I will save it first because I don't know if this is going to work. So what we're going to do then is make like, first of all, a lot of volume. We're going to go with rocks. And yeah, it doesn't really... Let's see if we make them really small. Let's see if we can use that to kind of form a pathway, like a dirt path. Which is really just rocks anyway. Right? Let's see how that looks from afar. Oh, it kind of works. What if I could change the color of the rocks, though, to be like more dirt color? Oh, there you go. Nailed it. Nailed it. Okay, so there might be something there. I definitely need to be smaller. Oh, good. Not quite, eh? They're a little too big, aren't they? Let's see. Yeah, too big. Too big. I wonder if I can... Is this insects? Yeah. Let's see. Is there anything else I have? No, probably just these rocks, I guess. Lots of variation. Make them really small. I'm not sure if that's working. I'm going to leave it for now just because it's done, but I'll do it over here too. It kind of creates like a bit of a dirt path. It takes a long time though. It's a lot of rocks. Yeah, I'm not really sure if I'm sold on that one. All right, okay. Let's knock that off and let's get into trees here. It's also getting pretty choppy because that's a lot of objects now. Okay. Let's get into trees. First of all, let's test our trees down in this area for size. What kind of trees do we think we want here? I don't know. Is this kind of like an evergreenish type of... It's way too big, but cool. Let's scale them down a little bit. There we go. I think that will do it, right? I don't want to mess around with too many different types of trees. Because obviously a forest, you don't have that many different types of trees. Also, we want to make sure that we have room to play, right? So we don't want just like trees everywhere. It shouldn't be that dense. Just enough to give it the sense of being a forest, right? So we're going to kind of spread these out through here. Toss this a save real quick. Nerdy, hey, how's it going, Nikki? How's it going, me old trout? She's going all right, I suppose. Making a forest. You may find yourself in this forest at some point. We're just making, right now we're doing, so I'm making a huge map, basically like a large forest map that then I can separate out into like smaller random encounter maps. But we don't want it to be too thick with woods or we won't be able to actually play on it. But it's coming together. How are things with you? What's good this weekend? What are you doing? What's doing? Ooh, spinning around. Blech. Now, of course, in a real forest, these trees would be a lot more dense, but we need to fudge it a little bit so we can use them for combat maps. Not bad, just trying to stay out of trouble. I know the drill. I know what the drill is supposed to be sometimes. It doesn't usually work for me. The trouble finds me, you might say. Yes, but otherwise all good. No complaints over here either. And maybe on these like opposite sides we'll thicken the woods up a bit. Pretty good randomization there. Ooh. Let's check the overhead again. Here we go. So this is kind of a bird's eye view of our map. Let's see. It is going quite slow now because there's so many things on the map. But this is a 30,000 foot view, we'll say. So when we zoom in, looks fabulous. Thank you. Getting fed steak and scallops at your dad's. That is the life. No complaints there. That sounds amazing. So we gotta zoom down. Way down. There we go. And I might even chop these kind of half by half, so. But I think we're about ready to do this thing. So what we'll do is we'll take pictures of this fairly far away, and then we'll section it out. Oops. We will section it out. We'll get the scale that we want. It's going to take a little bit of time because we have to zoom around. But we'll consider the scale we want for your average combat map, let's say, and we'll call it probably about here. Should be fine. We'll use these tents as a measure, as a benchmark. And from this, I should get like a ton of random encounter maps. Sonic Wing, yo, welcome. How's it going? How's it going? Good to see you. Happy Saturday. We are just finishing up the first phase of our map. So let's see. We got. This is probably the scale that we want here, somewhere around here. So we've just finished creating the map, and now we're going to take snapshots of it in different components, different areas, to use those as random encounter maps. So we created a big forest, basically, with a bunch of points of interest, and now we are just cropping it out to use as random encounter maps. And here's how we're going to do this. So we're going to do, there's one. All right. And then we're going to move over. We're just going to use that bridge as a reference. Oops. There we go. All right, missing D&D. Gonna have to look for a campaign to help with the D&D bug. Yeah, exactly. Nerdy looks like a place Cloud would be proud to call home. Indeed. Yeah, her forest dwelling. So we're just going to zoom around the map here a little bit. We're going to take some snapshots. Oops, I will save this too. Let me save it. Oops. There we go. There we go. And we'll just kind of keep flying around the map and just taking pictures in different angles. So we create a whole bunch of different encounter map scenarios. There we go. We'll take one here. There's the edge of our map. Let's go down a little bit. Take one there. Oops. Oh my God. Blech. Taught this kid to drive. And make our way back the other way. And this just creates some interesting locations for us to host combat in. Nerdy, thank you very much for the host. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Helping us get the word out. Very nice. Very nice. Yeah, so Sonic, where are you looking for D&D action? Do tell. We have our little campsite. And we're just looking for like interesting shots of the terrain, interesting groupings of the terrain, so do different things in. Oops. And we'll get an overhead of this little Stonehenge kind of area. I want to get a bit of this like kind of rocky terrain. That's cool. Some trees. Making combat a little more dynamic that way. And then I want to get a couple of where we have this little village over here. I love the detail in this program. It's beautiful. And then what we're going to do is we're going to import all these over to ArkenForge, and we're going to make them even more dynamic. So I can zoom in a little bit on this. Make this a little combat area with some buildings involved. Whoops. We'll go down, get another angle on this. All right, and I think we got a lot there, so I'm going to save this. The other thing we can do is I can always clip this out, take pictures of this in about 4 different sections, then piece it all together into one huge map and zoom down on that. But if I'm right, then this should give us what we need to port out into ArkenForge, which I'll show you how to do momentarily. But in the meantime, let's head back to the bar so I can get this screen off. But that effectively is Flowscape. Let's take a quick look at the whole map. So this is what we created today. It's a little bit choppy right now because it's trying to render all that ocean in the background. As you can see, we kind of fly in. We can get down to the actual 3D version of the map. We got our little campsite here that we created. Oops. Oh, where am I? Yeah, a little. Whoops. Oh my god. I went into first person view, so it shot me up into the sky. Oh my goodness. There we go. Okay. So if we zoom in on this little, see, the frame rate gets significantly better when it's not trying to render all that ocean stuff. So we created this little kind of shanty town as well for an environment. So we just built like a forest with multiple different environments that I can piece up, I can zoom in, I can shoot, we can create top-down maps with. And that's the idea. So now we're going to bring that into ArkenForge, which is the second part of my 2-part digital map making suite. And let's hit back to the bar so I can get that set up for you too. All right. Now I'm just going to close out of this here. ArkenForge takes a little bit of time to load up. I forgot about that aspect of things, so bear with me for a minute. Well, we let that do its thing. In the meantime, I hope you're getting set up for a great weekend ahead. Who's playing games? Who's got some D&D on the horizon? I had my Sunday game has been postponed. So we're moving that to Thursday so that everyone can be there because my characters are at a bit of a pivotal point in the game. Of course, we have DM's Guild feature showcase coming up on Wednesday this week. The continuing story of Glitterbomb, the sorcerer. We have Cloud, the monk. We have Drogon, the cleric of Dugmarin, and we have Muse, the artificer. This, of course, is our community D&D game, which the lovely Nerdy Chicken is a part of. She plays Cloud. And the story's coming together beautifully, so I'm really excited about it. If you haven't done so already, you can follow up on that, or you can catch up on that on YouTube. But also do be certain to follow me on the Twitters, which is right there for you. That's where all my updates go out through, so you'll always find everything that I'm doing right there on the tweeters. Let's see if Arkham Forge is ready to pop into here. It's going to take a minute to load up. So while it is doing that, we do a lot more things like this in the second half of the stream. Of course, the first half covers all of the D&D news, updates, rule solutions, sage advice, all that good stuff. But I'm going to be putting more of my attention into DMing, game prep, things like we're doing today. So the next thing that we'll do is maybe next week we'll take these, we'll bring them into Roll20 and show you how to set them up as random encounters, change your grid, specs and things like that, building campaigns in Roll20, creating notes, creating planning for hooks and story arcs and all that good stuff I'm looking forward to sharing. So very excited. I am very excited. Yeah. Otherwise, what's good? Yes, watch it. It's so much fun. I know we have a great amount of fun there. Awesome party. A great crew of players. I'm very lucky. Now, where is... Here we go. I got to find those maps while we're waiting for Arkan Forge. Arkan of the Forge. Here we go. I found it. I've found it. I have found it, you might say. So Flowscape saves all those pictures that we just shot of the overhead map to a folder, and right now I'm just moving them to the Arkham Forge folder so I can access them in game. We'll call this static. Getting there, gang. Just a little bit of patience loading up here, and then we'll be into Arkham Forge. And once we're in Arkham Forge, we can do a lot of things with like environment animations. We can add effects. We can change the day-night cycle, and that's what I really like about it. So once we do that, we can figure out how it works. Okay, we're all loaded up. So let me bring you over to the Arkham Forge Masters Toolkit. Where's my thing? Here we go. There we go. Yes, kind of. Yeah, no, that's right. Perfect. Okay. I wasn't sure if I had optimized this screen. So in Arkham Forge, what we have here is this is basically a little bit more of a functional animation tool set. This is really more of a kitchen sink, a complete campaign management system. So I'm going to go into Cartographer, and this is random encounters for forest as well. So we're going to create a new map. We'll call it Forest. Well, let's see. We already got. Let's make Forest 3. You know what? Let's call it Forest. Huge. It's huge. There we go. All right. So we're going to go in here and basically I want to get a sense of how large I want this to be. So I think we want this to probably be about a 50 by 50 map. And we can use the grid feature in Arkham Forge to do that. So the first thing we want to do is import the map. And we've brought them in here, I think under static. Yes, okay. So we've got all of these, right? So let's bring in just one first. I should have named these a little bit better, but I didn't. So don't blame me. All right, now we can scale this out. What I like to do here is first I'm going to draw a line to show the grid. So I want this to be, oops, that's not what I wanted to do. Let's do it here. So this will show me the size that I'm at right now, right? So I want 50 by 50, let's say, grid. There we go. Or 50 by whatever, right? So now I've got a fairly 50 sized grid. That'll give me some reference. Okay, we'll lock it. Gonna delete that. And let's show the grid. Oh, sorry, we have to put this as our background, the terrain layer. All right. Now when we zoom in, we can see the grid here. We can do animations and everything like that here if we want, but what I really like, since we're doing static maps, these are just going to be image maps for Roll20. What I really like about this is you can go into the day-night cycle, and I can actually change the time of day based on what I need, right? We can do things like that. We can add things like, let's see if I wanted like will-o-wisps type things. Let's do some insects. Do fireflies and add them. So I could do something like that. Let's see, I create a host of these. But most importantly, I want to give them light. So we'll make them light objects. So that when I make this a little bit later in the day or at night, I can have these cool kind of light effects, right? And that'll come through in my map when we export it. So let's say I wanted to make a day version of this, then we just do this. We export it out. We're going to export selection. And I'm going to just choose this whole thing. at least a good chunk of it. There we go. And that's currently 6,000 by 3360 pixels, which is a lot. Let's do that out to Roll20. So 70 by 70 pixels, which is one grid on Roll20. So now it's 3,500. We'll export it in a Roll20 format. And let's save that. Ta-da. Wonder when I save that. Here we go. VTT assets. Give me a sec here. Forest. There we go. Where did it go? Here we go. Forest huge. There we go. Maps, forest. Here we go. Put that there. We'll call it Riverside Flowers. All right, I'll pop that down for a quick sec. Get into Roll20 here, and we'll show you how to export it. Okay, and then I'll pop into a Roll20 game that I have loaded, and we'll show you what it looks like bringing this in. So let's take a look. So here we have this is one of the campaigns I'm running. It's actually Tyranny of Dragons for some friends of mine. So we're going to jump in here. We will make, we'll just create a new page. We'll call this Encounter Test. Jump over here. Now we wanted, this was intended to be a 50 by 50, I think we said, or 50 by whatever, right? So let's make this 50. I forget what the actual dimensions were. Were they 3,500 by 1960? So 1960 will give us 50 by 28 map. We'll go ahead and leave the grid enabled. We'll hit OK. And that makes it huge, which is exactly the size of our map. Okay. I apologize for that impression. Okay. So first thing we have to do is upload this map. This map is currently 12 by 7. Oh, God. So it's 12.7 megabytes. So you probably want some kind of image editor. I'm actually going to open this with... before we do this, I'm going to open this in Photoshop because that's crazy. It's too big. The map too big. Get out of Arc Forge here. Let's see. Oh, there we go. Nice, nice, nice. Very nice. open. I think I'm going to need music for this stream. What do you guys think? But I know they've been cracking down on that kind of stuff. So I don't know what the stipulation is right now for using music on stream. So I don't want to do that wrong. Okay. There we go. Let us do this. Oh, shit. You know what? I exported it with the grid. I didn't want to do that, but we'll just have to live with it for now. For purposes of this demonstration, we'll say this is a JPEG. And hopefully that will help get us where we need to be as far as the file size goes. Yeah, now it's 1.86 megs, so significantly better. We'll bring that in here. Just give that a quick minute to load up because Roll20 likes to take its time also. So what I would do in a situation just such as this, where we want to have a large map and make multiple encounters out of it. There we go. Come on. Come on. There we go. Normally I would not have the grid, so this wouldn't be as difficult as it's being right now. But, we kind of line this up properly the way that you want it. But I'm an idiot, and I slapped the grid in there. Let's see if this works. This seldomly works well, but let's see if we can get it to work today. Not too bad, but it's a little janky. So let's pretend that I didn't have the grid, and I will just line it up this way. Okay. So then what we do is we add our fog of war. Enable that fog of war right there like that, you see? And then I would just create multiple scenarios in here. So let's say if this was one scenario over here. Oh my goodness. Do not snap to grid. Do not snap to grid. Okay, so let's say this is where I was creating my scenario. Then I would just bring enemies in here. So let's say I want some creatures. Let's say I'm making kobolds. Right, so I'm going to say a couple of kobolds are hiding out here in the orchard. Right, this is one encounter over here. And an Erd. Bring my characters in. Sure, no problem. Bring a couple of characters in here. Right? So this now becomes one random encounter. And then over here, I can say set up another random encounter that feels like a totally different area. Say we want to do things like this. There's a cultist and 2 guards hiding out in the forest here. I can bring the same characters in, set them up, right? And then all I do is when combat erupts, I pull up this screen. I simply reveal the area that I want. I'm like, oh, this is where your combat's taking place right now. Shift Control hold to bring my player's attention to where the action is. And then all they can see is the window that I've given them, right? So now suddenly we've got a ready-made combat encounter. They battle, combat ends. I bring them back into, a scene. We continue. In the background, I come over here. I just simply reset the fog, right? And then next time combat erupts again, I say, okay, combat erupts again. And we come back in here, and this time I draw their attention over here. And I say, as you round the corner, you run into 3 kobolds and an Erd. And then, boom, we're right into another ready-made combat scenario. So that's how we can use... That's why, rather, I'm building these kind of big maps that I can use in multiple scenarios to just have random encounters ready to go as needed. And now we've got like 12 of these maps that we just created. I might compartmentalize that down a little bit, make them a little bit bigger, use all of those points of interest. But as I learn to plan for the scale, then that's what we do, and that's how we do it. So hopefully that's useful to you. I will continue to make these kind of maps because I have a lot of fun doing it. But what's really going to be fun is when we start to get into dungeon maps, and then we can create rooms, traps, animations. And that's what we'll be looking forward to doing next time right here on Shambazzle Games. So let's head to the bar, sign off, and get this weekend started. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining me today. A little bit of a different take. We'll do the news and all the kind of interaction on the first half of the stream, and then the second half of the stream is going to go right into game prep and things like that, so I can actually use this time to prepare for the games that I am running. And then in time, I will open up those games to the community, and hopefully we'll have a lot more opportunities to play D&D with one another. That's really where I want to take the focus of the content moving forward, really focus on the dungeon mastering aspect of the game, playing, designing, and creating great gaming experiences, and then, of course, bringing those community members like yourselves into those games so that we can play D&D together. That ultimately is the end goal. I have the wrong show caller up there the whole time. But hey, it's a work in progress. Thank you very much, everybody, for hanging out with me. Thanks, everyone who came through this stream today. Thank you so much, Talking D&D with the big subscribe today. Thank you for your support. Very much appreciate it. Nikki, Sonic, Seth, Chaos returning from the days of old, as well as Dr. Feargood. We have the How I Nerd crew in, Gamer Mom Luna. So many wonderful friends swinging by today. I really do enjoy it. Thank you so much for your time. I'm ready for an amazing weekend. I hope you are too. And we'll see you next time for another great stream. We've got 2Play coming up on Monday. Swing back because Steph and I will be continuing our playthrough of The Last of Us 2. Don't forget to follow up above if you want to show your support. Just toss me a follow so you know when we're live. I'd love to see you in the house for another stream. But until then, checkmates, happy gaming, be good to one another, and we'll see you next time right here on Shambazzle Games. Happy weekend.